Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
Hello and welcome back to the Happy Healthy Life Podcast with your host, Rob and
Randy.
And we are
the Happy Healthy Guys.
We are. Have you ever wondered why it is that when you were a kid, you wanted to eat like an entire stick of butter? Today, we're going to talk about why you should go ahead and eat that stick of butter. We're going to talk all things fat.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to miss.
Oh no, this is going to get good.
Of this, in fact, we're going to go two parts on this because it is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And let's get into it. One of the things that's happened when it comes to nutrition is that there is so much confusion. It seems like what was once bad is now good, and what was good a long time ago is now bad. There's things that have been vilified.
Yeah.
Should I eat breakfast? I heard it was the most important meal of the day. Now you're telling me that I shouldn't eat breakfast. I should be fasting in the morning. What in the world is going on? So today we are not going to be talking about fasting. We have done that in the past. Today we're going to be talking about fats. How many of you have been somewhere lately where you've heard somebody say this? So they may be ordering at a restaurant, or maybe they're shopping in the grocery store, and you see this person and they are saying, hey, you know what? I want to limit my fat intake. Or they're looking at the label at the grocery store and they are buying all of the things that are fat-free. Has anybody seen this lately? If you've seen this, you know what I'm talking about. Say yes. You're probably saying yes in your mind. Why is this even a thing that people would want to not eat fat?
Yeah, it was really the trend, still kind of trending, I guess, even from the 90s, right? I remember the 90s when they were telling us to, fat was making everybody sick. And so they told you to go no fat. I remember doing even this was like early 90s. And I was drinking no fat milkshakes, using no fat ice cream, skim milk, and pumps of the sugar because there was no fat in it, thinking I was healthy. And then I would buy no-fat Twinkies that I would eat as dessert in the evenings. That was my first health kick, was in the early 90s, trying to make some dietary changes. And I'm like, hey, if the American Heart Association said it's dangerous, well, it's got to be dangerous. So that was kind of my first journey into making dietary changes, was cutting out all of my fat.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I watched it and I was learning from my mom. I remember my mom going to the grocery store. She wouldn't even, being Hispanic, guacamole is a staple, right? Avocados.
It is.
And I can remember when she stopped.
It's a staple with white people too, just so you know.
True story. It is now.
Yeah.
And so I remember her literally stopping eating a guacamole anymore because the avocados had too much fat in them.
And she was just watching the news or listening to her doctor, I guess.
So anything, literally, fat was so vilified that if there was anything that had an ounce of fat, she wouldn't eat it. So I could remember when I had lost all the weight, and if you've heard us talk, you've heard me talk about
this is when you did it unhealthy.
Yeah, this is when this is when I did it unhealthy, when I was 13 going on 14 and literally starved myself to death. And so after I had gone to a meager 124 pounds and was wanting to now make healthier choices, those healthier choices still involved eating no fat. So I can remember eating a chicken breast, and I would cut every single piece of fat off of the chicken breast.
Me too.
And then I would make the chicken breast with a bunch of Uncle Ben's rice, because rice and chicken breasts were healthy choices.
Yeah, Uncle Ben.
Yeah, Uncle
That
Ben.
was Uncle Ben. He's probably not alive anymore, I would imagine, if he was following the low-fat processed grain strategy. But
He's hanging out somewhere with Aunt Jemima.
Yeah, probably so. I think Aunt Jemima was healthier than Uncle Ben, but who knows? But yeah, the crazy part is they were telling us this, pushing this narrative, this propaganda piece that fat was making us fat. And, I always kind of wondered, obviously I'm off the no fat bandwagon. I no longer eat no fat Twinkies. I've been rescued from that world. But maybe we could dive, Dr. Rob, deep into, what happened? How did fats really get vilified? And how did the American Heart Association and really the government guidelines, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, really all the three-letter agencies that control the narrative, how did all this get so corrupt? What actually was happening, and how did we get so scared of eating foods? But which, by the way, our ancestors were eating for thousands of years, way before the American Heart Association was ever founded.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think when you go back and you look, there's a lot of different things that were, it's like they were all tied together at the same exact time. But there was this guy named Ansel Keys
Yeah.
back in the 50s, and he did this research study that was supposed to involve 22 different countries. And what he showed is that these 22 different countries, the ones that were eating this saturated fat, had a higher level of heart disease or heart attack.
Hmm.
Here's what exactly, somebody just wrote it there, Mr. Cherry Picker. That's exactly what he did. Is
Yeah,
he cherry picked the
he
data,
did.
and he really only did the research on 7 of the 22 countries.
Interesting.
And they were the 7 countries that were also eating the most poorly. So these were people that were already unhealthy.
Hmm.
He wasn't looking at other countries like Denmark or France, who in France, if
Sweden,
you know anything about people in France who eat copious amounts of butter
the French
and are,
paradox,
yeah, the
right?
French paradox,
It's
and
not olive
they're
oil.
way healthier. So he's cherry picking all of the data to be able to show that it would cause heart disease. And so here's something that was also very interesting about the sample of people in the data that he got. Um, Even of the 7 countries that he had, he only surveyed 3.9% of the participants.
Are you kidding me?
Only 3.9% of the participants in
That's the
this.
biggest junk science ever, which doesn't surprise me, because that's really what the pharmaceutical industry does, is they cherry pick the data and then submit that for FDA approval. So this isn't shocking to
Yeah,
me.
so check this out. It gets even better. Okay, so when he was doing the study, on the island of Crete, the dietary data was collected during Lent.
Oh my gosh.
So guess what they weren't eating because it was Lent.
Saturated fat
Yes.
meat.
And so then you had the other countries that the data was being collected also during Lent.
Yeah.
So they're,
I'm assuming that's what they were eliminating.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they were
Yeah.
eliminating, the saturated fats, right? And so anyway, so that you've got that. In the analysis, back in 1989, they reanalyzed those 7 countries, and they found that the coronary mortality correlated best with sweet and sugar consumption, not saturated fats as originally reported.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
that's not shocking. When you look back, in fact, this may be a study that's conflating with the studies you're talking about. The 2 biggest studies that were ever put out there it was the Minnesota coronary and the Sydney diet heart. And they looked at those studies, and they said these studies prove that animal fats, saturated fat, cause heart disease. But here's what they actually found out was that those 2 studies, when they reanalyzed those studies years later, they found out there wasn't actually any correlation with heart disease being caused by saturated fat. In fact, they found the opposite, that all-cause mortality increased when you replaced saturated fatty acids from animal fats with industrial seed oil.
True story. And then
Yeah.
even as recent as last year in 2024, there was a study by Newport in Dayrit, and what they showed is that Keys erroneously conflated natural saturated fats with harmful industrial trans fats, leading to the flawed dietary
There
recommendations.
you go.
How crazy is that? So when you
Yeah.
go back then, okay, so think about it, back then, and you have what's called um, uh, the governing agency who governs these things is called the FDA. What does
Mhm.
the FDA stand for?
Yeah, Food and Drug Administration. I've never could figure out why the food regulation and the drug regulation are best friends. It's incestuous.
It is incestuous. So think about then if you could be able to get the public or people then to stop consuming the saturated fats, and we'll talk about why they're essential in just a few minutes. But if you could get them to stop doing that, then what you could also do is you could actually increase food production amongst farmers. Nothing against farmers, okay, and or grain, which also, increases the amount of inflammation in the body. But, where is it that we get things like corn oil from, vegetable oil
America.
from?
It's all subsidized, corn, soy, and wheat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
It's all
subsidized.
monocropping. It's all the incentives are to really force farmers, if they're going to be profitable, they're going to have to grow those products and they're going to have to do it in a way that is not sustainable and it's not healthy for the world and the environment, which is really screwing up our topsoil and depleting our food of nutrients.
Yeah, so it's pretty evil when you think about it,
Yeah.
right? Because then it becomes about control,
Yeah,
right?
and did you? I don't know if you were going to talk about this, but it's kind of right in line with this, Dr. Rob. Is around that same time with Ansel Keys and all of these lies that they're perpetuating. This is where Procter and Gamble jumped into this whole equation. And for those of you who don't know, Procter and Gamble at that time was working on taking the industrial oils, these industrial seed oils, and making a food product. And if you've ever heard of this product, which if you grew up in the 70s and
I
80s,
already know what you're going
like
to say.
we did, it's called Crisco. So Procter and Gamble, what they did was they actually paid the American Heart Association $20 million. And what they said was here that the American Heart Association at that time in the 50s, it was a very small group. And this donation from Procter and Gamble, this bribe is what it was, actually turned them into a national organization. And so because of that, they now launched the product Crisco, and the American Heart Association started promoting the use of these fake vegetable oils. And so nearly 90% increase in the consumption of vegetable oils like Crisco happened between 1970 and 2014. And if you even go back and look at, since 1900, butter consumption has gone down 63%. Lard consumption has gone down 78%, which, by the way, that's what my mom and her family grew up on back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. But the PUFA, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the industrial seed oil, that has gone up 2,900% as butter consumption's gone down, as lard consumption has gone down. And guess what's happened to heart disease, cancer, chronic disease, stroke, and all major illness? It's shot through the roof.
Yeah, that's one of the things that our friend Dr. Asim, who we saw that,
Malhotra.
Do No Pharma,
Yeah.
came out with that movie. He also published in the British Medical Journal how those studies were faulty about Ansel Keys and showing about, talking about those people actually consuming a lot more sweets,
Yep.
a lot more saturated fats, all the things we're talking about right now. We should actually bring him on the podcast. He'd be
We
a great
should.
person for
He's
the
a great dude.
podcast. But yeah, so it's pretty incredible that what they were doing, like you were saying, with the American Heart Association, and now people were able to start paying the American Heart Association to be able to have an advertising space, right, on their cereal boxes, right?
Yeah.
To be able to do that, which is crazy because they're now buying the
You see it
American
all the
Heart.
time now.
You see it all the time.
Slapped on cereal boxes, this is approved by either the American Heart Association or the American Diabetes Association. All these things. It's like doctors are approving these products. And I don't know that we're really in the business of reversing chronic disease if we're leaning on doctors for our health recommendations, specifically our food recommendations, because you look at the food pyramid and what's it built of?
Yeah, it's built on all these harmful things that we're talking
Yeah.
about right now as being the foundation of the
Of
pyramid.
nutrition, and
Yeah,
it couldn't be
so
it couldn't be more of the
you
opposite.
should just flip it literally upside down.
Exactly.
And so one of the things is they did as well, and it's crazy when you look back on the fact that they were able to pull this off, was shifting the consumer demand from wanting things like these saturated meats, and we'll talk about what the healthy ones are here in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
But shifting them over from that then into this consumer demand for things like, quote, vegetable oil, right?
Because on the surface, that sounds really great, right? Eat your veggies, and then, hey, why not consume vegetable oil, especially if you can take studies, falsify them, and then move that forward as if that would be the strategy to improving your health, right?
Yeah, and
Because I can get how you could get tricked.
Yeah,
I mean, I got
yeah,
tricked.
we
I got played.
we all did,
Yep.
and so then there was also really a tactic to be able to diverge people from the harmful ingredients that were in those things. So if we could say, hey, it's fat free, we can then fill it with all of these other dangerous chemicals in there, and you don't even know that that's happening to you. So now you're consuming those, and once again, food and drug administration. So if we could get these people sick, well, then and now they're going to take more drugs.
Yep.
And so if we put bad food into them and they take more drugs, it's just this evil cycle that just goes around and around and around.
It's a brilliant
So
business model. If you can imagine, it's kind of like what we've talked about before with the medical system. It's kind of like, the medical system, they pull out a bat and they break your legs and then they hand you crutches and say, see, what would you do without us?
or my favorite one is they pee on your leg and tell you it's raining.
That's my favorite one. It's pissing on my leg, for lack of a better word. Mom, I hope you're not listening. Peeing on my leg and then tell me that it's raining. Don't believe your lying eyes, right, Dr. Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so there you go. So it's been vilified. Okay, so let's talk about then why these saturated fats are important.
Vitally important.
Vitally important
Key.
to your body. And so one of the reasons that they're vitally important for our body is the fact that, well, you look at even the brain, for example, so over 60% of the brain is made up of these fats that we're talking about. 60% of the brain is fat. Okay, so you've got to have fat in order to be able to create healthy tissues. You also look at the cell membrane. 50% of the cell wall, or the membrane of your cell, that the nutrients have to pass through, are made up of these saturated fats. Not only that, but you also need these fats in order to be able to, these fats and cholesterol, in order to produce important hormones inside the body. Specifically, you got to make sure that you've got cholesterol in order to produce all the steroidal hormones inside your body, right? So like the estrogen, the progesterone, the aldosterone, the cortisol, all of these things that are needed inside your body to be able to also not only help you to build stronger bones, stronger muscles. You need it also for metabolism.
Hello.
Right? Hello, metabolism. You got to have it to decrease your stress levels. All of these different things. It's essential for that. And it's no wonder why. And I was thinking about this as we were preparing for this, is that because it is needed for those hormones inside your body and the synthesis of them, also the synthesis of vitamin D inside the body as well. It's very important.
Yeah.
And so now every single street corner seems to have a tea clinic.
Everybody's got hormone problems.
Everybody's got hormone. Everybody needs
figure.
The hormone pellets.
Yeah.
Well, look at what it is that we've been doing, right? So we've been destroying
our hormones.
The hormones, and now we're going to give you something in order to be able to help you, and somehow that's okay, and that's not something that's regulated by the quote Food and Drug Administration.
No, these are for-profit, industries that they have patents with pharmaceutical companies. A lot of these people that even lobby Congress are now executives in these type companies. They're not looking out for us. And about that, and right on that note too, along with the vilification of saturated fat, that's when they were able to throw cholesterol under the bus.
Yeah.
And now get on this cholesterol propaganda where now everybody has a cholesterol consciousness, and that is obviously cholesterol is found in animal fats and saturated fats, and that was linked to heart disease, which is really crazy because one of the fatty acids found in saturated fats is called stearic acid. It's an 18 carbon chain. I know we're going to talk about this. Saturated fatty acid. We'll talk more about that in a second and what that means. But what they found in this study, and it's very powerful, is they showed that actually stearic acid is the preferred source of fuel for your heart, and that this is the driving fatty acid for your mitochondria. And so when you think about that, if you stop eating animal fats, you're no longer getting stearic acid, you're depleting your body of essential fats. And now, not only are you depleting your body of stearic acid, now they've got you on this low fat, low animal fat based diet. So now you're not even getting cholesterol. And the big issue with that is cholesterol is so vital to the cells of our body. And when you look at it, cholesterol really it's an antioxidant. One of the talking points that we've heard over the years, and if you're listening, I'm sure you've heard this, is that, but seed oils or unsaturated fats, like canola or corn or peanut or soy or flax, these oils lower your cholesterol. So they're piggybacking off the fact that they're saying, hey, cholesterol causes heart disease. You want to lower it. And it is true. If you eliminate saturated fat and stearic acid, you are going to lower your cholesterol. But the problem is lowering your cholesterol doesn't make you healthy. In fact, it actually cripples your body and it makes you sick. And the studies I mean, heck, at this point, how many studies are out there showing? One of the two biggest studies was out of Denmark and out of Sweden, showing that people live longer and have less all-cause mortality if you have higher cholesterol. But one of the reasons your cholesterol gets lower when you eat seed oil, when you eat unsaturated fats, is because cholesterol, because it's an antioxidant, if you're eating these toxic seed oils, your body has to make more cholesterol to send out to your body from the liver to help protect the cell membranes of your cells. So the cholesterol starts packing itself into the cell membranes. Now there's less in blood circulation. So your LDL goes down, but your oxidized cholesterol, what's called LP little a, goes up. So it's all smoke and mirrors. Your LDL lowering does not correlate with lower heart disease. In fact, they even did a study where everybody ate Oreo cookies and their cholesterol went down. But it's because their cholesterol that went down wasn't the good or the bad cholesterol. It was because your body had to make more to protect your cells and the blood levels went down. It is all a lie. And who in their right mind would think eating Oreo cookies would be a good idea for your health? In fact, the Oreo cookies even lower cholesterol better than statin drugs. Give me a freaking break, Dr.
So
Rob.
don't go run out there and start eating a bunch of Oreo cookies
Exactly.
either. So yeah, right here, a 2022 study published in JAMA found that lowering LDL, using statins had an inconsistent and inconclusive impact on cardiovascular disease outcomes, such as heart attacks, myocardial infarction, stroke, and all-cause mortality.
There you go.
So even the studies and their own studies are showing that, but that right there is how powerful that movement had changed the perception of people, because there are still people even that may be listening to this going, you know what, but I still got to take my statin medication, even though we're showing you the studies that are showing you that there is no correlation between that and then having a heart attack. And I think about also even people that we work with and that we get to be able to coach, that'll come in and will say things like, hey, you know what? You don't understand, I'm vegan. And one that I'm thinking about, and I won't call her by name, we'll call her Catherine. Okay. I remember Catherine saying, hey, you know what? I'm vegan. And her reason for being vegan was for all of the health reasons that we're talking about right now. It wasn't because of, animals and things like that. That's a whole separate.
It wasn't a religious thing.
So that's a whole separate thing, but had gotten to where she was consuming a ton of seed oils. And we'll talk more about that next week. She was consuming vegetable oils, the corn oils, all the things, anything that you could find that was vegan. In fact, we were talking a little while ago about this morning, and I may have just said it just a little while ago. I don't even remember. We always talk about these things, but somebody saying, hey, just give me all the vegan options at the coffee shop that I was at.
Right.
That was her thinking that she was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, only consuming about 1,200 calories a day and still not able to lose weight. She was tired, not able to sleep, cold all the time. And this is one of the worst parts of it, and just always in a bad mood. Why? Because our hormones were a wreck. And so after then working with us, getting her eating good animal fats, proteins, good carbohydrates, well, not only was her metabolism able to turn off after working with us for only 5 weeks, was able then to increase her caloric load by more than 2,500 calories a day, and be able to have a faster metabolism, be able to maintain a healthy weight, ended up losing 15 pounds just in that 5 weeks by no longer literally succumbing to that rhetoric that you had to eat everything fat-free or eat the vegetable oils and everything vegetable, that you could be able to find, and is now healthier than ever before, more energy levels, better mood? Who doesn't want a better mood? And so it's
better sex drive. Like that
yeah.
really is boilerplate rhetoric to vilify this. It reminds me too, speaking of another story, it's our good friend Dylan Gemelli,
Yeah.
who's
Oh my
a
gosh.
huge influencer in the wellness industry. And he for years was on these no fat diets. And by adding in healthy fats, specifically SCT oil, shameless plug, the world's healthiest fats are in SCT oil in their cleanest, most bioavailable form. But he was able now to recover better from workouts. He's in the bodybuilding industry. His skin better libido, better hormone testosterone profile, more clear function, less brain fog. Like everything that you do when you start bringing in these animal fats begin to upregulate your metabolic profile. And if animal fats were really bad for us, let's just talk common sense. Screw the studies, right? There's a study for everything. Screw the studies. If you just think about it, common sense. If animal fats were bad for us, then we would all be dead because we're animals. And what are we made of? We are made of fatty acids that are in their saturated form, cholesterol, saturated fats. That is what makes up our body, Dr. Rob. So how could they be so evil if God made us in perfection and he designed us to thrive and be happy and healthy, and the majority of the fats in our body are made from saturated fats? Speaking of breast milk too, by the way, very saturated.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you do then? Right. Yeah. And so if you can't do and we'll talk more about the monounsaturated, the polyunsaturated fats, then
we'll dive really deep next time on those for sure, because there's a lot you need to know about those fats. They're not innocuous, guys. You're not getting away with it. They're very dangerous, if not deadly.
Yeah. So if you're wondering how they're affecting you, one thing that you could do is go to metabolismscore.com and find out what's going on with your metabolism, because having a poor metabolism is a telltale sign that these vegetable oils. And we'll talk more about like the seed oil and the half-life of seed oil and how long it takes to get out of your body, because that's one of the benefits of these saturated fats that are also then helping produce more cholesterol inside your body, which is a good thing to be able to help you detoxify.
Absolutely.
From these things. Because
our best antioxidant in our body is cholesterol.
Absolutely. And that's happening in your liver. It's happening in your gut. It's happening in different areas inside your body. So it's a good thing. You have to make sure that you have it even in the kidneys. So, all right. So what are some good oils? Well, some good oils, obviously, you talked about that a second ago. If you're going to cook utilizing any kind of oil, we always recommend cook with SCT oil. And the reason you want to cook with SCT oil is because that's very stable under high heats. I was talking to Dr. Randy yesterday or the day before, and how it would have been yesterday, about how I was geeking out about this, because I was looking through an old box. I was looking for something, and what I found my old organic chemistry set.
You took me back to the summer of 1997, stressing out taking organic chemistry 1 and 2 for that summer. That was a brutal summer.
Yeah. So like with our SCT oil right here, this is if you're watching and you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching us live right now, you see that this right here is this is a 5-carbon chain fat. Okay.
Wow, I like that's one of my favorites. Butyrate.
That's butyrate.
That's butyrate.
So that's butyrate here. And then you also have this guy over here. So so this right here being a saturated fat. Here's what that means. That means that every one of these carbons, and if you see these little black circles right here, that's the carbons, and then each one of them is surrounded by these hydrogens. That's these white dots right here. So these white dots are taking up all the space, which means that it's now it's saturated in hydrogen. That's why it's called a saturated fat.
Single bonds.
Single bonds. Yep. So what you'll see though is this is very stable. Okay.
Even try to like mess with it, like with the structure of it, when you've got those single bonds, create strength.
Yeah.
The stability of those fats are incredible, which is the way it's supposed to be.
Versus this is an unsaturated fat, and look at the difference in the shape as well, right?
Crazy.
And so
it just squishes all together. Yeah.
Yeah, it squishes all together, very unstable. And so that right there is why that's not a good thing for your body. And that's why it's also very unstable when it comes to heat and goes rancid very easily.
Yeah, those are all double bonds. And this is going back to common sense. I like our little biochemistry lesson there. That's Professor Dr. Rob, but it's so true when you just look at that structure. But this is when you go back to common sense is When fats are unstable, so they're unsaturated and they've got all those double bonds, which do not give it strength, what happens is these fats break down and create reactive oxygen species, or quite known as free radical damage, when they're exposed to heat, light, and oxygen. That's what will break down these fatty acids.
These double bonds right here, they break because they're very weak like that.
Yep.
And so now you've got the
Wreak havoc.
oxidative stress, exactly.
Like
and
shrapnel
now
going off in your body.
Connect to that guy right there, so it's not good. Okay,
you got it. So that's why when we're talking about cooking, you want to cook in fats that are more solid at room temperature, because these are your stable, saturated fats. The whole myth that, hey, if you eat the fat that's solid at room temperature, then it gets solid in your arteries. Well, what is the normal temperature of the human body?
What is
98.6?
Yeah.
I mean, it differs for everybody. It's definitely over 95. What do you think happens to that solid fat when you heat it to 95 degrees? It becomes liquid. So that's a myth. It doesn't clog arteries. The problem is when you use the oils that are liquid at room temperature, because those are the ones that have the double bonds that are unstable. And when you expose them to heat, cooking, light, oxygen, that's why good olive oil is in a dark glass bottle to protect it from light, because it breaks down much easier. So that's just common sense. You'd want to cook in a fat that's stable under heat, light, and oxygen. And saturated fats like animal fats, butter, SCT oil, tallow, lard, those are the fats that our ancestors cooked in. When heart disease was, you'd never eat, doctors would go a whole career and never have a case of heart disease, where now it's the #1 cause of chronic illness. It's insane. So yeah, you want to start cooking in the animal fat, specifically, SCT oil, which is our favorite.
Yeah, and you also want to do things like grass-fed butter, for example.
And you can get that everywhere now.
Green-fed, grass-fed as well, because as soon as you start feeding these animals grain, you're screwing them up, right? Because for all the reasons that we're talking about right now, as far as the inflammation goes, now your body's having to work harder to be able to overcome that, which is also, sometimes it can seem like it's impossible to stay away from those things, which again is why we always recommend, go to metabolismscore.com, find out what's going on, because it's going to give you instructions and tell you what you should do if that is an issue, because you got to detoxify your body of all of these harmful oils, which again, we'll talk about more next week. But then you also have, okay, so what are some of the saturated, fats that you can be able to get it into your body as far as eating goes? You could get like a grass-fed beef, for example.
Yeah.
Some bison, some lamb.
You're listing off ruminant animals, which are those multi-chambered stomach animals, which really are just magical creatures, right? What you said, lamb, beef, bison and buffalo, things like deer are great, elk, even probably can't get caribou quite easily.
Never even had it, but
antelope, which are great. I just bought some kangaroo meat the other day.
You did.
Nobody turned me over to PETA. It's a semi-ruminant. It has a 2-chambered stomach, but the beauty of those multiple stomachs, which by the way, humans are monogastric, chickens, turkeys, pork, which is why what they eat is even more important from a fatty acid profile. But those multiple stomachs can biohydrogenate. So they do have the ability to take grasses and maybe other oils and then turn them into stearic acid or those saturated fatty acids, which is why ruminant animals that are fatty are some of the best foods you can put in your body. So amen to that.
And then you got raw organic dairy, for example. Woo. So you've got your hard cheeses.
Yep.
All those things have high levels of saturated fat. Again, what your body needs. Again, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next week, we'll talk about
part two,
which is going to be the monounsaturated. We'll talk about, okay, what about the avocado oils? What about peanut oil? What about
peanut
olive
butter,
oil?
right?
all the different things that people always ask us about.
What
those
about
things.
flaxseed oil?
What do you use to cook? Yeah, exactly. What about flax? All these things that we've been taught were healthy. I can remember just crushing. Literally crushed up flax seeds into my protein shakes, right?
Yeah, eating the flax crackers, grinding the flaxseed, getting the flaxseed oil. And you look at the oil, if you've ever put a jar or a bottle of flaxseed oil in the refrigerator, you'll see how all those double bonds don't allow it to solidify. And you stick, obviously, you stick, SCT oil in the refrigerator, it becomes really, really hard and dense. But that's why cold water fish have so much omega-3 and have so much linoleic acid, those PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, because they don't freeze under cold temperature. The problem is when you heat these up, they break down and they wreak havoc on your body. So yeah, solid fats at room temperature, cooking those, avoid all of the oils, and we'll dive deeper in part 2 on why those liquid oils, specifically things like canola, corn, soy, peanut, and some other things that you may be shocked. We're also going to go through the 5 areas next week on next episode where you could be getting seed oil and you're not even aware of it. It is that toxic. Plus, like you said, I'm even more excited about, we're going to show you how to detox your body from seed oil, because this stuff just doesn't go in and out. It stays there forever.
It stays there forever, and it makes you fat, right? It makes you gain weight.
Destroys your metabolic profile versus
storage.
saturated fats, which actually upregulate your metabolic profile and help you burn more calories.
Yeah, I love giving this information. I mean, just from what it is that we give, even on the podcast alone, helps people to be healthier. We love hearing people who are listening to the show. So thank you so much for that. What we're going to do as well is we're going to put a graphic onto our social media. So if you go to @the H2Life, you're going to want to screenshot that graphic, because the graphic is going to show you all of the healthy fats to be able to eat. So you can be literally at the grocery store looking at exactly the photos and the pictures of these healthy fats that you can eat, as well as the ones to stay away from. So go to the H2Life. We've got that there for you. So check that out. Comment also if you've got any questions. We'll make sure that we answer your questions here live on the air, give you a shout out as well. So thank you so much for watching, for listening to the H2Life, the Happy Healthy Life podcast. Share it, like it, rate it, review it, all the things.
Yeah, remember, ultimately, you're in charge of your health, your path, your journey, your destiny. Don't turn it over to anybody. Always question everything. But remember, the truth really is that God made you to be healthy. Don't ever forget that. And that God does not need help healing anybody. He just needs no interference. This is why you do play the ultimate role in your health. Don't ever forget that.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram at the H2Life, or on YouTube and Facebook at the Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.